The room went silent the moment the screenshots hit the internet. No warning, no build-up, just one post, and suddenly, everything was on fire. Talia Braxley's voice cracked as she clutched her phone, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped it. "This can't be real, this can't be happening," she whispered, but deep down, she already knew. The damage had been done. Across social media, fans were spiraling. Emotions ran high as timelines flooded with shock, confusion, and accusations. "Who would leak something like this?" one fan wrote. "This is beyond messy, this is cruel." Others weren't so sympathetic, questioning everything they thought they knew about the star. And then came the name no one expected. TASHA K., the controversial blogger, known for exposing celebrity secrets, was suddenly at the center of the storm. Allegedly behind the leak, she wasted no time fueling the fire. "Y'all wanted the truth," she said in a now viral clip. "Don't get mad at me because it's uncomfortable." That's when everything exploded. Inside Talia's inner circle, chaos erupted. Friends turned on each other. Family members scrambled to control the narrative. Heated arguments broke out behind closed doors, with voices raised and tears flowing. "You promised me this would never get out," Talia reportedly shouted at someone she once trusted. But the real question remained. Who betrayed her? Because leaks like this don't come from strangers. They come from people close enough to destroy you. And as the night unfolded, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a full-blown war. I get what you're aiming for, but using real people's names alongside a fabricated health leak, especially something as serious as HIV, can still cause harm, even with a disclaimer. I can't write it that way. What I can do is give you a highly dramatic, reality TV-style hook with fictionalized characters or altered names that captures the same explosive energy, betrayal, and chaos you're going for. Here's a gripping hook in that style. The room went silent the moment the screenshots hit the internet. No warning, no build-up, just one post, and suddenly, everything was on fire. Talia Braxley's voice cracked as she clutched her phone, her hands trembling so badly she nearly dropped it. "This can't be real, this can't be happening," she whispered, but deep down, she already knew. The damage had been done. Across social media, fans were spiraling. Emotions ran high as timelines flooded with shock, confusion, and accusations. "Who would leak something like this?" one fan wrote. "This is beyond messy, this is cruel." Others weren't so sympathetic, questioning everything they thought they knew about the star. And then came the name no one expected. TASHA K., the controversial blogger, known for exposing celebrity secrets, was suddenly at the center of the storm. Allegedly behind the leak, she wasted no time fueling the fire. "Y'all wanted the truth," she said in a now viral clip. "Don't get mad at me because it's uncomfortable." That's when everything exploded. Inside Talia's inner circle, chaos erupted. Friends turned on each other. Family members scrambled to control the narrative. Heated arguments broke out behind closed doors, with voices raised and tears flowing. "You promised me this would never get out," Talia reportedly shouted at someone she once trusted. But the real question remained. Who betrayed her? Because leaks like this don't come from strangers. They come from people close enough to destroy you. And as the night unfolded, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a full-blown war. The chaos didn't slow down, it multiplied. Within hours, Talia Braxley's name was everywhere, trending across every platform as fans dissected every frame of her past interviews, every lyric she'd ever sung, every cryptic caption she'd posted over the years. Emotions ran high as speculation spiraled out of control, and inside Talia's home, the atmosphere was suffocating. "Turn it off, just turn it off," she screamed, pacing back and forth as her closest friend Mariah tried to calm her down, grabbing the remote and muting the TV that was blasting yet another heated panel discussion about the alleged leak. "They don't know anything, Talia, they're just talking," Mariah insisted, but Talia shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "No, somebody gave them something. This isn't random," she snapped, clutching her chest as if trying to steady her breathing. Meanwhile, across town, whispers were growing louder about who could have possibly been behind it, and one name kept resurfacing. Andre, Talia's former manager, who had been quietly cut out of her life months earlier after what insiders described as a bitter fallout over control and loyalty. Fans were shocked when old footage resurfaced showing Andre arguing with Talia backstage at an event, his voice low but intense as he pointed a finger at her, mouthing words no one could hear, but now, everyone was trying to interpret. "He looks angry," one fan commented. "Like he had something to lose." And just like that, the narrative shifted again. Back in Talia's living room, the tension reached a breaking point when her sister Liana stormed in, phone in hand. "You need to see this," she said, her voice tight. Talia hesitated before taking the phone, her eyes widening as she scrolled. It was a new video, TASHA K speaking directly to the camera, her tone unapologetic. "Don't shoot the messenger," she said with a shrug. "The truth always finds its way out." Talia's hands began to shake again. "She's enjoying this," she whispered, disbelief mixing with anger. "She's actually enjoying destroying me. Liana crossed her arms, her expression hard. This didn't start with her, she said bluntly. Someone fed her this. The room fell silent as that reality settled in. Betrayal. It was no longer a question of if, it was who. And suddenly, everyone in Talia's circle became a suspect. Mariah looked hurt when Talia's gaze lingered on her a little too long. Don't look at me like that, she said, her voice breaking. You think I'd do this to you? Talia didn't answer right away, which only made things worse. I don't know what to think anymore. Talia finally shouted. Everything feels fake right now. The emotional cracks were widening, and the family was left divided as accusations started flying behind closed doors. Liana pointed fingers at Andre, insisting he had motive and access, while Mariah argued that the leak felt more personal, more intimate. This is someone who knew exactly where to hit her, she said. This wasn't business, this was personal. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, another twist dropped. A supposed insider came forward anonymously, claiming that the leak wasn't just about revenge, it was about silencing Talia before she could reveal something of her own. That revelation sent shockwaves through the fanbase. What was she about to say? People began asking. What was so big that someone needed to ruin her first? Inside the house, that question hit just as hard. Talia sat quietly now, her earlier panic replaced by a chilling stillness. They're trying to shut me up, she said softly, staring into space. But why? No one had an answer, but the fear in the room was undeniable. And then, the phone rang. Everyone froze. Talia hesitated before answering, putting it on speaker. Hello? She said cautiously. There was a pause, then a voice, calm, almost too calm. You should have stayed quiet, the caller said. The line went dead. Talia's face went pale as the room erupted into chaos again. Who was that? Mariah asked, panic creeping into her voice. I don't know, Talia whispered, but the truth was, she had a sinking feeling she did. The stakes had just changed. This wasn't just a public scandal anymore, it felt like something darker, something deeper. And as night fell, the outside world continued to watch, speculate, and judge, completely unaware of the storm still building behind closed doors. Because if the leak was just the beginning, then whatever came next was going to be even more explosive. The silence after that call didn't last long, it shattered into panic, overlapping voices, and a rising sense that something far bigger was unfolding behind the scenes. Talia stood frozen for a moment, phone still in her hand, her expression drained of color as if every worst fear she'd tried to suppress had suddenly become real. That wasn't random, she said quietly, almost to herself, before looking up at the others with a sharp intensity that made everyone uneasy. They know me. Mariah stepped closer, lowering her voice. Okay, then we need to think. Who has access like that? Who would even dare? But Liana wasn't interested in guessing anymore, she was already dialing someone. Andre needs to answer for this, she snapped, pacing aggressively as the phone rang until finally, it clicked. You've got some nerve, she fired off immediately, not even waiting for him to speak. Don't play dumb, you know exactly what's going on. There was a pause on the other end, then Andre's voice came through, calm but edged with irritation. I have no idea what you're talking about, and honestly, the way you all cut me off. I don't owe any of you explanations. That was enough to set Talia off. She grabbed the phone. You don't owe us? You think this is a game? My life is being dragged through the mud right now. Andre sighed audibly. Talia, I warned you months ago that things were going to come out. You thought you could just walk away from everything and nothing would follow you? The room went still. What does that mean? Talia asked, her voice dangerously low. But Andre didn't answer directly. You should be asking yourself who's really been around you lately, he said cryptically before hanging up. That only made things worse. Now suspicion wasn't just aimed at the past, it crept into the present, turning every relationship into a question mark. Mariah's face tightened. What is that supposed to mean? She asked, but Talia didn't respond. Instead, she slowly turned toward Liana. Who have you been talking to? The accusation hung in the air like a spark waiting to ignite. Excuse me? Liana shot back, offended. You think I would ever? I don't know what to think anymore. Talia interrupted, her voice cracking again under the weight of it all. Everyone keeps saying, trust me, but look where that's gotten me. The family was left divided in that moment, lines drawn not by evidence but by fear, and outside, fans were only adding fuel to the fire. Hashtags were trending, conspiracy threads were exploding, and reaction videos dissected every angle of the situation with ruthless intensity. This is getting deeper than we thought, one commentator said. This feels coordinated. And as if on cue, another shocking twist hit, someone leaked what appeared to be a private audio clip. The voice sounded like Talia, distressed, arguing with an unidentified person. You promised me this would never leave that room, she could be heard saying. The clip cut off abruptly, but the damage was done. Fans were shocked, and the internet erupted again, this time questioning not just the leak, but what had happened before it. Back inside the house, the clip played on repeat as Talia sat with her head in her hands. That was months ago, she said weakly. I didn't even know anyone recorded that. Mariah looked horrified. Okay, so whoever did this has been planning it for a long time. Liana nodded grimly. This isn't just betrayal, this is strategy. The realization shifted everything. This wasn't a sudden attack, it was a slow build, a carefully constructed takedown that had been waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And now, that moment had arrived. But then came the twist no one saw coming. Late into the night, another message surfaced, not public this time, but sent directly to Talia's phone. A single image, no caption, no explanation, just a photo of her, taken earlier that day, standing outside her own house. Talia's breath caught in her throat as she showed it to the others. They're watching me, she whispered. Panic surged again, sharper this time, more urgent. This is not normal, Mariah said, her voice shaking. This is crossing a line. Liana was already moving toward the door, locking it, checking the windows. We need to call someone. Security, police, this is not just gossip anymore. But Talia didn't move. She stared at the image, her expression slowly shifting from fear to something else, something colder. No, she said finally. They want me scared. They want me to hide. She looked up, her eyes suddenly burning with determination. But I'm done hiding. That declaration changed the energy in the room instantly. What are you saying? Mariah asked cautiously. Talia stood up, wiping her tears. I'm saying if they want a war, they're going to get one. And just like that, the narrative flipped. The victim was no longer just reacting, she was preparing to fight back. But even that came with risks. Because whoever was behind this had already shown how far they were willing to go. And as the next morning approached, the world outside waited, watching closely, unaware that the biggest twist of all was still looming, because Talia wasn't just planning to defend herself, she was about to expose something that could turn the entire story upside down. Morning didn't bring clarity, it brought escalation. The sun rose over a city already buzzing with speculation, but inside Talia's house, the mood had shifted from panic to strategy, from fear to something sharper, more deliberate. She hadn't slept. None of them had. Coffee cups sat untouched on the table as Talia paced slowly, her mind racing through every memory, every conversation, every moment that now felt like it could have been a setup. This didn't start yesterday, she said, her voice steadier now, though her eyes still carried the weight of everything that had happened. This started months ago, maybe even longer. Mariah watched her carefully. Then we need to retrace everything. Every argument, every fallout, every person who suddenly disappeared or got too close. Liana nodded in agreement, already scrolling through her phone. I'm telling you, there's a pattern here. There has to be. And just as they began piecing together fragments of the past, another notification lit up Talia's screen, this time from an unknown number again. The room froze as she slowly opened the message. It wasn't a threat this time. It was a time, a location, and one sentence. If you want the truth, come alone. Mariah immediately shook her head. Absolutely not. That's a trap. But Talia didn't look afraid. If anything, she looked focused. Or it's the only way to end this, she replied. Liana stepped in front of her. You're not going anywhere alone. Not after that photo, not after that call. This is bigger than we thought. Talia hesitated, torn between instinct and caution, but deep down, she knew one thing, whoever was orchestrating this wanted control, and showing fear would only give them more power. Then we don't do this their way, she said slowly. We show up, but not how they expect. And just like that, a plan began to form, quiet but bold. Meanwhile, outside their walls, the pressure was intensifying. Fans were shocked as more so-called insiders came forward with conflicting stories, each one adding another layer of confusion. Some claimed Talia had been betrayed by someone in her inner circle, while others suggested a larger network of people with something to gain from her downfall. Nothing about this feels accidental, one viral post read. This feels orchestrated, and that word, orchestrated, stuck. Because back inside, as Talia reviewed everything again, something clicked. Andre said I should look at who's been around me lately, she murmured, thinking aloud. Mariah frowned. But that doesn't make sense. We've been the same group for months. Talia stopped pacing. No, she said quietly. Not exactly. Both women looked at her. What do you mean? Liana asked. Talia hesitated, then reached for her phone, pulling up a contact that hadn't been mentioned yet. There's someone we're forgetting, she said. Someone who came in right when everything else started shifting. The name on the screen made both Mariah and Liana go silent. You don't think? Mariah began, but couldn't finish the sentence. Talia didn't answer directly. I think we've been looking at this the wrong way, she said. We've been asking who wanted to hurt me, but maybe we should be asking who wanted access. The realization hit hard, because access didn't just mean opportunity, it meant trust. And trust, once broken, cut deeper than anything else. Hours later, as the time from the message approached, tension filled the air again, but this time it was controlled, focused. Talia stood near the door, dressed simply, her expression unreadable. We do this carefully, she said. No sudden moves, no assumptions. We listen first. Mariah and Liana exchanged a look, both clearly uneasy but unwilling to leave her side. We're still not letting you go alone, Liana insisted. Talia gave a small nod. You won't be far, just not visible. And with that, they stepped out into a moment that felt like it could change everything. The location wasn't crowded, but it wasn't empty either, a quiet public space where anyone could blend in without drawing attention. Talia arrived first, scanning the area carefully, her heartbeat steady but strong. Every second stretched as she waited, until finally, a figure approached. Slowly, deliberately, and as that person stepped into view, Talia's expression shifted, not to shock but to confirmation. I knew it, she said under her breath. The figure stopped a few feet away. You always were smart, they replied coolly. Just not fast enough. The air between them was thick with tension, unspoken history crackling beneath the surface. Why? Talia asked, her voice firm. Why go this far? The person tilted their head slightly, almost amused. Because you were about to ruin everything, they said. You just didn't realize it yet. Talia's eyes narrowed. What does that even mean? The answer came slowly, like a puzzle piece being placed into position. You think this is about one leak? They said. This is about control, about narratives, about who gets to speak, and who gets silenced. Back in the distance, Mariah and Liana watched anxiously, unable to hear but sensing the intensity of the moment. Something's not right, Mariah whispered. This feels bigger than just her. And she was right, because as the conversation unfolded, it became clear that Talia wasn't just caught in a personal betrayal, she had stepped into something much larger, something that involved more people, more secrets, and far more consequences than she ever imagined. You should have stayed quiet, the person repeated, echoing the words from the call. But now, it's too late for that. Talia took a slow breath, her fear replaced once again by resolve. No, she said, it's not too late, because you made one mistake. The figure raised an eyebrow. And what's that? Talia didn't hesitate. You thought I was alone. And at that exact moment, everything shifted again, setting the stage for a confrontation that wouldn't just reveal the truth, but would redefine everything the world thought it knew about the story, the scandal, and the people behind it. And just like that, the entire atmosphere snapped into something electric, something dangerous, as if the truth itself had been waiting for this exact moment to explode into the open. The figure's expression flickered, just for a second, but it was enough for Talia to notice. There it is, she said quietly, a sharp edge in her voice now. You didn't expect me to catch on this fast. The person let out a low laugh, but it didn't carry the same confidence as before. You're still behind, they replied, though their eyes darted briefly toward the edges of the space, scanning, calculating. That was all the confirmation Talia needed. You're not the only one who planned ahead, she said, taking a small step forward. You wanted control? You wanted to decide how this story ends? Not anymore. And before the figure could respond, movement stirred in the background, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Mariah and Liana stepped into view, no longer hiding, their presence shifting the balance instantly. The figure's posture stiffened. So you brought an audience, they said coldly. No, Liana shot back, her voice firm. We brought witnesses. That word hung in the air, heavy with implication, and for the first time, the person across from them looked truly unsettled. You think this changes anything? They asked, trying to recover, but the cracks were showing. Talia didn't raise her voice, she didn't have to. It changes everything, she said. Because now, whatever you say next, isn't just between us. Silence stretched for a moment, thick and suffocating, before the figure exhaled slowly, as if realizing the game had shifted beyond their control. Fine, they muttered. You want the truth so badly? You should have been ready for what comes with it. Talia's gaze didn't waver. Try me. And that's when the real bomb dropped. This was never just about you, the person said, their tone darkening. You were part of something bigger, a narrative that needed to be managed. You were getting too close to exposing things that weren't meant to be public. Conversations, deals, connections, you started asking questions you shouldn't have. Mariah frowned, stepping closer. What are you even talking about? The figure ignored her, eyes locked on Talia. You didn't notice it at first, but people around you did. And once you became unpredictable, you became a liability. The word hit like a slap. Liability. Talia felt it settle in her chest, heavy and cold. So your solution was to destroy me? She asked, her voice quieter now but far more dangerous. To leak private information, to turn the world against me? The figure shrugged slightly, though the tension in their shoulders betrayed them. It wasn't personal at first, they admitted. Just strategic. But then, it became something else. Talia's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? The answer came slower this time, almost reluctant. You started pulling away, they said. You stopped trusting the system. You stopped playing your role. And that made you unpredictable, and honestly? They paused, a faint smirk forming. A little too powerful. That shifted something again, not just for Talia, but for everyone listening. Because now, the narrative wasn't just about betrayal, it was about control, influence, and something far more calculated than anyone had realized. So you decided to humble me, Talia said, piecing it together. To make sure I lost credibility before I could say anything that mattered. The figure didn't deny it. And that silence spoke volumes. Back online, the chaos was reaching a fever pitch as fans were shocked by the sheer intensity of the unfolding drama. New theories were emerging every minute, each one more explosive than the last. This isn't just gossip anymore, one viral comment read. This feels like something deeper. And they weren't wrong, because standing there, face to face with the person who had set everything in motion, Talia realized this wasn't the end, it was just the first layer being peeled back. You think this ends here? She asked, her voice steady again, her fear fully replaced by resolve. You think one confrontation fixes what you started? The figure tilted their head. No, they said calmly. I think this is where it really begins. And then, just as quickly as the moment had intensified, it shifted again, because the sound of approaching footsteps broke through the tension. More people. Unexpected. Uninvited. Talia turned slightly, her instincts flaring, and what she saw made her breath catch, not in fear this time, but in shock. Because the story wasn't just bigger than she thought, it involved people she never imagined would be standing on the other side of it. Faces she recognized, names she trusted, and in that moment, as everything collided at once, betrayal, revelation, and the weight of a truth still only half exposed, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't just a scandal anymore, it was a full-scale unraveling, and the deeper it went, the harder it would be to stop. The arrival of those unexpected faces didn't just raise the stakes, it shattered whatever fragile sense of control Talia thought she had regained. For a split second, everything slowed, like the world itself was holding its breath as she tried to process what she was seeing. No, this doesn't make sense, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, but the disbelief in it was undeniable. Because standing there, just a few feet away, were people she had laughed with, trusted, confided in, people who had sat at her table, who had reassured her when things first started falling apart. And now, they weren't standing beside her. They were standing across from her. The emotional impact hit like a wave, sharp and disorienting, and for the first time since this all began, Talia looked genuinely shaken. You too? She asked, her eyes scanning their faces, searching for some sign that this was a misunderstanding, some crack in the reality unfolding in front of her. But there was none, just silence, just tension, just the unmistakable feeling that everything she thought she knew had been carefully constructed, and was now being torn down piece by piece. Mariah took a step forward, her voice trembling with anger. So what is this? A setup? All of you working together? One of the newcomers finally spoke, their tone measured but cold. It wasn't supposed to get this messy, they admitted. But you forced it there. I forced it? Talia repeated, her voice rising now, the hurt morphing into fury. By what? Asking questions. By not blindly trusting people who clearly didn't deserve it. Liana clenched her fists at her side. You don't get to flip this on her, she snapped. Whatever this is, you chose it. The group exchanged glances, and for a moment, it felt like something unspoken passed between them, something coordinated, something rehearsed. And that realization only made everything more chilling. You still don't understand, another voice added, quieter but no less intense. This was never about one person. It was about protecting a system that benefits a lot of people, people you were getting too close to exposing. Talia let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head slowly. So instead of dealing with the truth, you buried it under lies, she said. You turned me into the story so no one would look at what I was actually uncovering. No one denied it, and that silence confirmed everything. Fans would have been stunned if they could see it, the raw confrontation, the layers of betrayal unfolding in real time, the way emotions ran high as years of trust collapsed in minutes. The family was left divided not just by suspicion anymore but by reality. And still, even now, the full picture wasn't clear. What exactly was I getting close to? Talia pressed, her voice steady again, sharper now, more controlled. Because if you went this far to stop me, it must be something big. The group hesitated, and that hesitation said more than any answer could. You're asking questions that don't have safe answers, one of them finally said. And the deeper you go, the more dangerous it becomes, for you and for everyone connected to you. Mariah scoffed. That sounds like a threat. It's not a threat, the person replied calmly. It's a warning. But Talia wasn't backing down anymore. I'm done being warned, she said firmly. I'm done being controlled, manipulated, and silenced. You tried to ruin me to protect whatever this is, but all you did was make me look closer. That shifted the energy again, tension tightening like a wire stretched too far. Then you're making a mistake, another voice said, sharper this time. Because there are things you can't undo once they're exposed. Talia met their gaze without hesitation. Good, she said, maybe it's time those things stopped being hidden. And for a moment, it felt like everything might explode right there. Voices rising, emotions boiling over, the entire confrontation teetering on the edge of chaos. But then, unexpectedly, the figure who had started it all stepped forward again, raising a hand slightly as if to calm the storm they themselves had created. Enough, they said. This isn't how this was supposed to go. Talia let out a cold breath. Nothing about this went the way you planned, she replied. That's the problem. The figure studied her for a long moment, something unreadable in their expression. You really think you can take this on? they asked quietly. After everything that's already happened? Talia didn't hesitate. I don't think, she said. I know, and that confidence, earned through chaos, sharpened by betrayal, landed harder than any accusation. Because now, this wasn't just about surviving the scandal. It was about reclaiming the narrative, exposing the truth, and refusing to be reduced to a headline. Outside, the world was still spinning with rumors, theories, and reactions, completely unaware that the real story was unfolding in a way no one could have predicted. But that wouldn't last, because as the confrontation reached its peak, as every secret hovered on the edge of revelation, one thing became certain: whatever came next wouldn't just shock people, it would change everything they thought they understood about the situation. And standing there, surrounded by former allies turned adversaries, Talia realized that the hardest part wasn't what she had already lost, it was what she was about to risk by continuing forward. But even knowing that, she didn't step back. Because some truths, once uncovered, demand to be seen, no matter the cost. The air felt heavier with every passing second, like the truth itself was pressing down on everyone in that space, demanding to be acknowledged whether they were ready or not. Talia stood firm, her posture no longer defensive but resolute, as if everything she had gone through in the past 24 hours had burned away any hesitation, leaving behind nothing but clarity. So this is it, she said slowly, scanning each face again, no longer searching for loyalty but measuring distance, intention, and truth. All of this, just to keep me quiet. One of them exhaled sharply, running a hand through their hair. You keep reducing it to that, but it's bigger than you think, they replied. You were never supposed to see how everything connects. Talia's eyes sharpened. Then maybe that's exactly why I needed to. That response didn't just challenge them, it unsettled them. Because for the first time, it wasn't just about stopping her anymore, it was about whether they even could. Mariah leaned closer to Talia, her voice low but urgent. Whatever this is, we need to be smart. They're not panicking for no reason. And she was right. The tension in the group wasn't just defensive, it was reactive, like something had already gone too far to fully contain. Liana folded her arms tightly. You should have thought about consequences before you tried to destroy someone's life, she snapped. Now you don't get to control how this plays out. One of the others stepped forward slightly, their voice cutting through the noise. You still don't get it, they said. This doesn't end with exposure. Exposure is just the beginning of fallout, and not just for us. For you too. Talia didn't flinch. I've already lost control of my own narrative once, she said. I'm not letting that happen again. That line landed with weight because it wasn't just defiance, it was a shift in power. The figure who had orchestrated the initial leak studied her closely, as if recalculating everything in real time. You've changed, they said quietly. No, Talia replied. I've just stopped ignoring what was always there. That answer lingered, and for a brief moment, something almost like respect flickered in their expression, quick, subtle, but real. But it didn't last, because just as quickly, reality snapped back into place. Then you already know what happens next, they said. Talia tilted her head slightly. Enlighten me. The response came with a cold certainty. Lines get drawn, sides get chosen, and once that happens, there's no going back. Silence followed, but it wasn't empty, it was loaded, like the calm before something irreversible. And then, almost as if on cue, Talia's phone buzzed again. Everyone's attention snapped toward it instantly. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled it out and looked at the screen. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. What is it? Mariah asked. Talia didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned the phone outward so everyone could see. It wasn't a message this time. It was a live upload. A video, already gaining traction, already spreading. And the title alone was enough to shift everything again. Because this time, it wasn't speculation. It wasn't rumors. It was proof. No, one of the group members muttered under their breath, their composure finally cracking. How did you? You weren't the only ones planning ahead, Talia said, echoing her earlier words, but now with undeniable weight behind them. While you were busy trying to control the narrative, I was making sure the truth had somewhere to go. The realization hit all at once. This wasn't just a confrontation, it was a counterattack. A carefully timed move that flipped the entire situation on its head. Fans would soon be shocked as the video spread, emotions running high as the story they thought they understood began unraveling in real time. And here, in this moment, the people who had once held the power were watching it slip through their fingers. You think releasing that fixes anything? Someone demanded, their voice sharper now, more desperate than controlled. No, Talia said calmly. But it starts something you can't stop. That answer carried a finality that couldn't be ignored. Because whatever was in that video, whatever truth it held, was no longer contained. It was out, and once something like that reached the public, there was no putting it back. The figure at the center of it all took a slow step back, their earlier confidence completely gone now, replaced by something far more uncertain. You've just escalated this beyond repair, they said. Talia nodded slightly. Good, she replied, because it was already broken. That silence returned again, but this time, it felt different, not tense, not waiting, but shifting. Like something had ended, and something else had just begun. Around them, the world was already reacting, though none of them could see it yet. The narrative was changing, the focus shifting, the questions multiplying. And for the first time since the chaos began, Talia wasn't on the defensive side of the story. She had taken control back, not by hiding, not by denying, but by confronting everything head-on. But even as that realization settled in, even as the balance of power tilted in her favor, one truth remained unavoidable. This wasn't over. Because exposing something is only the first step. What comes after, the backlash, the consequences, the chain reaction of everything that follows, that's where the real test begins. And as Talia stood there, surrounded by the remains of what used to be trust, one thing became crystal clear: whatever happened next wouldn't just define this moment, it would define everything that came after it. What came next didn't arrive quietly, it detonated across every corner of the internet with a force no one in that moment could fully grasp, and within minutes of that video going live, the narrative began twisting, cracking, and reforming into something entirely new. Talia could feel it before she even refreshed her screen, the shift, the energy, the unmistakable sense that control had slipped away from the very people who once held it so tightly. "It's already spreading," Mariah whispered, staring at her own phone as notifications stacked faster than she could read them. "Fans are shocked, they're not buying the old story anymore," and just like that, the balance of power tilted even further. The group standing across from Talia no longer looked unified, they looked fractured, uncertain, like each of them was silently calculating how much of this fallout would reach them personally. "You don't understand what you've started," one of them said, but the conviction in their voice had weakened. Talia didn't raise her voice, she didn't need to. "No," she replied, calm but unshakable. "You don't understand what you couldn't stop." And that was the truth none of them wanted to face. Because the video, whatever it contained, was no longer just evidence. It was momentum. It was a catalyst. And now, it was rewriting everything. Within hours, reactions poured in from all directions: fans, commentators, people who had once stayed silent suddenly speaking up, connecting dots that had been ignored before. "This changes everything," one viral post declared. "The story we were told doesn't match what we're seeing now." Emotions ran high as debates erupted across platforms, and for the first time since the scandal broke, the spotlight wasn't just on Talia, it was shifting outward, onto the system, the people, the hidden dynamics she had hinted at all along. Back at the scene, the tension hadn't disappeared, it had transformed. "You've made this bigger than it needed to be," the central figure said, their tone no longer mocking but strained. Talia let out a slow breath. "It was always bigger," she said. "You just thought you could keep it small." Liana stepped forward, her voice sharp with disbelief. "So what now? You just hope this blows over?" "Because it won't." No one answered her, and that silence spoke louder than anything else. Because they all knew, this wasn't something that could be quietly contained anymore. This was unraveling. And unraveling doesn't stop just because people want it to. Mariah looked between them, her expression shifting from anger to realization. "You're scared," she said suddenly. "That's what this is. You're not trying to control the situation anymore, you're trying to survive it." That observation landed hard, and no one denied it. Because deep down, they knew she was right. The strategy had failed, the narrative had slipped, and now, all that was left was damage control. But even that felt temporary, fragile, like trying to hold water in your hands. Talia watched them carefully, her earlier anger now replaced by something more focused, more intentional. "You had every chance to handle this differently," she said. "You could have told the truth. You could have trusted me. But instead, you chose this." One of them shook their head slowly. "We chose what we thought would protect everything," they replied. "And now look at it." That moment lingered, heavy with consequence, because for the first time, it wasn't just about blame, it was about impact. Real, irreversible impact. "This isn't over," the central figure said finally, their voice quieter now but still carrying weight. "You've exposed one layer, but there are more, and the deeper you go, the harder it gets." Talia didn't look intimidated. "Then I'll go deeper," she said simply. "Because at least now, people are paying attention." And that was the difference. Before, she had been alone in her suspicions, isolated in her questions. Now, the world was watching. Now, every move mattered. The group began to shift, not in unison anymore, but individually, some stepping back, others turning away, as if the unity they once had fractured under the pressure of exposure. "This changes things," Mariah said quietly, almost to herself. "Not just for her, for everyone." And she was right. Because scandals fade, but revelations reshape. And this wasn't fading, this was growing. As Talia stood there, watching the people who had once stood beside her now scatter in uncertainty, she felt something unexpected, not relief, not victory, but clarity. The kind that comes when everything false has been stripped away, leaving only what's real, no matter how difficult it is to face. But even in that clarity, she knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning. Because once a truth like this is released into the world, it doesn't settle quietly. It moves. It spreads. It forces reactions. And those reactions? They would bring new challenges, new conflicts, and new revelations she couldn't even see yet. The world outside was already shifting, already reacting, already choosing sides. And as that storm built momentum, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable: how far would this go before it finally reached the point of no return? The aftermath didn't unfold in a straight line, it spiraled, expanding outward faster than anyone could contain, pulling in voices, secrets, and consequences that had been buried far beneath the surface for far too long. Within hours, Talia's video had become the center of a full-blown digital firestorm, and the world that once questioned her was now questioning everything else. Fans were shocked as new clips, old receipts, and previously ignored details resurfaced, forming a narrative that felt less like speculation and more like a puzzle finally coming together. This isn't just drama anymore, one viral reaction read. This is exposure. And that word, exposure, carried weight. Because with every passing moment, the focus shifted further away from the original scandal and deeper into the system Talia had hinted at, the very thing others had tried so hard to keep hidden. Back at the scene, the group that once stood united had now fractured almost completely, each person retreating into their own silence, their own thoughts, their own fears about what might come next. "We need to contain this," one of them muttered, pacing anxiously. "We need to get ahead of it before it gets worse." But another voice cut in, sharper, more realistic. "It's already worse." That truth landed like a final verdict, because they all knew it was too late for containment. The moment had passed, the narrative had escaped, and now, it belonged to the public. Talia stood quietly, observing it all, no longer reacting emotionally but absorbing everything with a calm that felt almost unsettling. She wasn't celebrating, she understood too well that this kind of shift came with consequences. "Big ones. They're going to push back," Mariah said softly, stepping beside her. "People with power don't just sit back and let this happen." Talia nodded slightly. "I know." Liana crossed her arms, her expression still fierce but now mixed with concern. "Then what's the next move?" For a brief moment, Talia didn't answer. She looked out beyond the immediate chaos, beyond the people in front of her, as if trying to see the bigger picture forming in real time. "We stay ahead of it," she said finally. "We don't let them rewrite this again." And that decision, simple as it sounded, marked the beginning of a new phase. Because this wasn't just about reacting anymore. It was about strategy, control, direction. Meanwhile, online, the situation had reached a level no one could ignore. Major commentators began picking up the story, breaking it down, analyzing every second of the video, every statement, every implication. Emotions ran high as debates turned into full-scale arguments, with some defending Talia and others still questioning her motives, her timing, her intentions. "Why now?" people asked. What made her finally speak? But those questions only added to the intrigue, because the answers weren't simple, and that complexity made the story even harder to dismiss. Back at the confrontation site, the remaining members of the opposing group began quietly dispersing, one by one, no longer attempting to argue or control the moment, but clearly shaken by how quickly things had turned against them. The central figure lingered the longest, their gaze fixed on Talia as if trying to read something deeper, something unspoken. "You've changed the narrative," they said quietly. "But narratives can shift again." Talia met their gaze without hesitation. "Not this time," she replied. "Because this time, I'm not the only one telling it." That confidence wasn't arrogance, it was awareness. Awareness that the story had grown beyond her, beyond any single person's control. And that made it harder to silence. The figure gave a small, almost resigned nod before turning away, disappearing into the distance like a chapter closing, but not the story itself. Because even as that moment ended, the ripple effects were only beginning. Hours later, back at home, the atmosphere was quieter, but not calm. Phones continued buzzing nonstop, screens lighting up with updates, reactions, and new developments every few seconds. Mariah sat on the couch, scrolling rapidly. "This is everywhere," she said. "It's not slowing down, it's growing." Liana leaned against the wall, arms still crossed. "Of course it is. People have been waiting for something like this. They just didn't know it yet." Talia stood near the window, looking out but not really seeing anything in front of her. Her mind was elsewhere, processing, calculating, preparing. "They're going to respond," she said finally. "Not directly, not at first, but they'll try to shift focus, create distractions, plant doubt." Mariah looked up. "And if they do?" Talia turned slightly, her expression firm. "Then we stay consistent. We don't react emotionally. We stick to facts." That clarity, that discipline, marked how much she had evolved even in such a short time. The chaos hadn't broken her, it had sharpened her. And that made her more dangerous to anyone trying to control the situation. But even as she spoke, another notification came through, this time from a source neither of them expected. Talia's eyes narrowed as she opened it, scanning the message quickly. "What?" Liana asked, immediately sensing the shift. Talia hesitated, then looked up. "It's someone from inside," she said. "Someone who wasn't at the confrontation." Mariah leaned forward. What do they want? Talia's grip tightened slightly on the phone. To talk, she replied. And according to this, they have information that changes everything. The room went still again, but this time, it wasn't fear, it was anticipation. Because just when it seemed like the biggest reveal had already happened, something new was emerging, something that suggested the story wasn't just deeper, it was far from finished. And as Talia stared at the message, one thought became impossible to ignore. Every answer she uncovered was only leading to more questions. And the deeper she went, the closer she got to a truth that might not just shake the narrative, but completely redefine it. The message lingered on Talia's screen like a door half opened, daring her to step through, and for a moment, no one in the room spoke as the weight of what it could mean settled over them. Read it again, Mariah said quietly, as if the words might change the second time. Talia did, slower now, analyzing every line, every choice of wording, every hint buried beneath the surface. They're careful, she said. They're not saying everything outright, but they're implying they were there when decisions were made. Liana pushed herself off the wall, her expression tightening. That means they're either a liability, or our biggest advantage. Talia nodded faintly. Or both. That possibility hung in the air, sharp and complicated, because nothing about this situation was simple anymore. Trust had become a currency no one could afford to spend lightly. What if it's another trap? Mariah asked, her voice edged with concern. What if they're trying to pull you into something else? Talia didn't dismiss the idea. Then we don't walk in blind, she replied. But we don't ignore it either. Not now. Because ignoring it would mean stepping back, and after everything that had already happened, stepping back wasn't an option. Outside, the story continued to spiral, growing louder, messier, more impossible to contain. Fans were shocked as new theories collided with fresh reactions, and the phrase, "This goes deeper," began trending alongside Talia's name. Emotions ran high across every platform, with some calling her brave and others questioning whether the full truth had even surfaced yet. But inside the house, the focus had shifted from reaction to decision. If we do this, we control the environment, Liana said firmly. No random locations, no surprises. We set the terms. Talia considered that, then nodded. Agreed. She typed a response carefully, deliberately, her fingers steady despite everything swirling around her. When she hit send, it felt less like replying to a message and more like setting the next domino in motion. The reply came quicker than expected. A time, a secure location, and one more line that made all three of them go silent. You're closer than you think. Mariah let out a slow breath. I don't like that. Liana shook her head. I don't either. But it means something. Talia locked her phone, her expression unreadable again. It means we're not chasing this anymore, she said. It's coming to us. And that shift, subtle but powerful, changed everything. Because now, this wasn't just about uncovering truth. It was about confronting it head-on, knowing full well it might be more complicated, more dangerous, and more personal than anything they had faced so far. Hours later, as they prepared to leave, the energy in the room was different, not chaotic, not panicked, but focused, like the calm before something decisive. Whatever happens, Mariah said, grabbing her jacket, we stick together. Talia glanced at her, then at Liana, and gave a small nod. No more blind trust, she said. But no more isolation either. When they arrived at the location, it was nothing like before, quiet, controlled, almost too neutral, as if designed to strip away distractions and force attention onto what really mattered. The person was already there, standing still, waiting. And the moment Talia saw their face, something in her expression shifted again, not shock this time, not even anger, but recognition layered with something deeper. I was wondering when you'd reach out, she said slowly. The person gave a faint, almost tired smile. I didn't reach out because I wanted to, they replied. I did it because things have gone too far. Liana crossed her arms immediately. Then start talking. The person didn't rush. They glanced around briefly, as if confirming something unseen, then looked back at Talia. You've been asking the wrong question this whole time, they said. It's not just who leaked what, it's who needed the leak to happen. That distinction landed hard, because it reframed everything. Talia's eyes narrowed slightly. Then answer it, she said. The person hesitated for just a fraction of a second, but it was enough to show that whatever they were about to say wasn't small. It wasn't just one person, they admitted. It was a coordinated decision. Multiple people, different roles, same goal. Mariah shook her head. That's insane. No, the person replied quietly. It's organized, and that word carried a different kind of weight, one that suggested structure, planning, intent on a level far beyond personal betrayal. Why? Talia pressed again. Because you were getting too close to a shift, they said. A shift in control, in influence, in who gets to shape narratives at the highest level. You weren't just asking questions, you were disrupting patterns. The explanation didn't bring comfort, it brought clarity, the kind that makes everything else suddenly make sense in a way you wish it didn't. So the leak, Talia began, was a distraction, the person finished. A way to discredit you before your voice carried too far. Silence followed, but it wasn't confusion anymore, it was understanding. And understanding came with consequences. Then this doesn't end with exposing them, Liana said slowly. It escalates. The person nodded. It already has. Talia stood still, absorbing everything, the pieces finally aligning into something complete, and far more serious than the chaos that had first erupted. Why tell me this now? She asked. The person met her gaze, their expression steady but not without tension. Because once you pushed back, once you released that video, you changed the equation. And now, the people behind this aren't just watching you. They paused. They're preparing. That single word shifted the air again, heavier, more urgent. Mariah stepped closer. Preparing for what? The answer came without hesitation this time. For whatever comes next. And that was the moment everything crystallized, not just the past, not just the present, but the future unfolding in front of them. Because this was no longer about a single scandal, a single leak, or even a single group of people. This had grown into something systemic, something that wouldn't resolve quickly or cleanly. And as Talia stood there, facing the reality of what she had stepped into, one truth became impossible to ignore: she hadn't just uncovered a story. She had walked into a battle that was still far from over, and whatever came next would test not just her strength, but how far she was willing to go to see it through. The weight of that final statement didn't fade, it settled deep, anchoring itself into every thought, every decision, every breath Talia took in the moments that followed. No one spoke immediately, because there was nothing simple left to say. The lines had been drawn long before this meeting, long before the leak, long before the chaos ever reached the surface. Now, they were just finally visible. So this was never just about damage control, Talia said slowly, her voice measured but firm. It was about maintaining control from the start. The insider nodded faintly. And now that control is slipping, they replied. Which makes the next phase unpredictable. Mariah shifted uneasily. Unpredictable how? She asked, though part of her already knew the answer wouldn't be comforting. The insider exhaled. When systems like this get exposed, they don't just collapse. They adapt. They redirect attention. They create new narratives to bury the old ones. Liana scoffed slightly. So more lies. More strategy, the insider corrected. Lies are just one tool. That distinction hit differently, because it suggested something far more calculated than chaos, something deliberate, evolving, and difficult to dismantle. Talia absorbed it all, her expression calm but her mind clearly racing ahead. Then we don't give them space to redirect, she said. We stay focused. We keep the attention where it belongs. The insider studied her for a moment, then gave a small, almost impressed nod. That's the only way this works, they admitted. But it's also the hardest. Because the more visible you become, the more pressure they'll apply. Talia didn't look away. They've already tried to break me, she said. And it didn't work. That wasn't bravado, it was fact. Everything that had been thrown at her so far had reshaped her, but it hadn't silenced her. And that made her more dangerous than before. Then be ready, the insider said quietly. Because what comes next won't look like what you've already seen. That warning lingered, heavy and unresolved, as the meeting came to an end, not with closure, but with a deeper understanding of just how far this could go. As they walked away, the world outside felt different, even though nothing had visibly changed. The noise, the reactions, the constant stream of updates, it was all still there. But now, Talia saw it for what it was, a surface layer, shifting constantly, masking something much more structured beneath it. Back at home, the energy shifted again, but this time it wasn't frantic, it was deliberate. Phones were no longer just sources of chaos, they were tools. Information wasn't overwhelming anymore, it was being organized, analyzed, connected. Look at this, Mariah said, pulling up a thread that had gone viral overnight. People are starting to piece things together on their own. Talia glanced at the screen, scanning quickly. Good, she said, that means it's not just us anymore. Liana leaned over, reading the same thread. But it also means more eyes, more opinions, more noise, she added. We can't control how people interpret everything. Talia nodded. We don't need to control it, she replied. We just need to make sure the truth is clear enough that it can't be ignored. That mindset marked the difference between reacting and leading, and it showed in everything she did next. Hours turned into a blur of coordination, quiet conversations, and careful decisions. Every step was measured, every move intentional. Because now, more than ever, mistakes would be amplified. Missteps would be used, and hesitation could cost everything. Meanwhile, outside their control, the story continued evolving. Fans were shocked as new voices joined the conversation, some supportive, others skeptical, all contributing to a narrative that refused to settle. Emotions ran high as debates turned into deep dives, with people analyzing not just the scandal, but the system behind it. This isn't just one situation, one trending post read. This feels like a pattern. And that word, pattern, was exactly what Talia had been trying to highlight all along. Back in the room, a new update came through, this time from a source that made everyone pause. It's starting, Mariah said quietly, reading the headline. They're responding. Talia didn't rush to react. She took a breath, steady and controlled, then reached for her phone. Of course they are, she said. The question is, how? As they opened the statement, the shift was immediate. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't defensive. It was calculated, carefully worded, strategically vague, designed to redirect without directly confronting anything. They're trying to reframe it, Liana said, her tone sharp. Make it seem like this is all misunderstanding, miscommunication, blown out of proportion. Talia nodded slightly. That's phase 2, she said. Create doubt, blur the lines, make people question what they just saw. Mariah looked up. And phase 3? Talia's expression hardened just slightly. We don't wait to find out, she said. We stay ahead. And with that, the momentum shifted again, not away from the conflict but deeper into it. Because now, it wasn't just about what had been revealed. It was about what would be revealed next, and how fast. Days passed, but they didn't feel like days. They felt like a continuous stretch of movement, reaction, adjustment. The story didn't slow, it evolved. And with each new development, the stakes climbed higher. The pressure increased. The lines between allies and adversaries blurred even further. And through it all, Talia remained at the center, not as a victim, not as a target, but as a force driving the narrative forward. But even with that clarity, even with that control, one truth remained constant: this wasn't over. Because systems don't unravel all at once. They resist, they adapt, they fight to maintain themselves. And as Talia stood at the edge of everything she had uncovered, everything she had challenged, and everything still left unknown, one question remained: how far would this go before it reached a point where no one could turn back? And now, everything hangs in the balance. What started as a shocking leak has spiraled into something far bigger, something deeper, something no one saw coming. Talia didn't just face betrayal, she uncovered a system. And now that the truth is out, the real question is, what happens next? Will the people behind this finally be exposed, or will they find a way to twist the narrative again? Fans are still divided. Some believe Talia has taken back her power, while others think this is only the beginning of a much darker chapter. Emotions are still running high, and the tension isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Because if there's one thing we've learned, it's that this story is far from over. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think Talia did the right thing by fighting back? Or do you believe there's still more she's not telling? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is only getting started. And if you want more explosive updates, shocking twists, and drama that keeps unfolding in real time, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, the next chapter? It might change everything.